been 48 hours since Galvin's camp decided he was going to the Bulldogs. What's the hold-up, though? Why hasn't he signed or officially agreed to terms, do we know? Is it going to be close or...?
I think it's close. I think it definitely happens this week, but for whatever reason, I think maybe the agent likes a little bit of power and control games, so that could be why the handbrake's just been pulled slightly, but I think it will happen, Cross.
Yeah, it's look, how many clubs at this time of the year have this sort of money sitting there just waiting for someone to come along? Like Gus said, it only happened in the last week, so I'd imagine it takes a little bit of time to plan.
I think he's shuffling the decks a little bit.
Oh, well, who knows? Like, if you're a cynic, which I am, you listen to Gus's denials about this for months, and you look at all the evidence that all along going back to last August indicated that there was a love affair here, that he wanted him at the Bulldogs, and it's almost like this has been manipulated to occur over a period of time. And even recently, Gus did say in one of his podcasts that he didn't think that Lachlan Galvin could stay at the Tigers. And so, you know, and then we're led to believe this has all happened when the goalpost changed a few days ago. Really?
Is that good business?
Did we come down in the last shower?
But is that good business if you're running a club like the Dogs and you're keeping them off the scent?
Well, Gordon, it is. But he also has an obligation to everyone who watches his programs and listens to what he says to at least give him an indication of what the truth is. And we see it here on this table, Braith. You're often put in a position where you have to comment about players that you manage. And you don't sit there and try and lead us astray. There may be some things that you can't talk about, Gord, but you also have to give an honest insight into where you stand as a commentator.
I think where the lines get blurred around Gus is, and this is what agitates and infuriates rival clubs no end. They're all blowing up at the moment. They've all been at head office at Andrew Abdo and Peter V'landys. He is highly paid as the face, or one of the faces of Channel 9, and then he's also highly paid as the general manager of football of the Bulldogs. And in his running commentary on Lachie Galvin, it's now clear in the fullness of time that it doesn't appear as though he's been transparent the entire time. He's had to bowl the flipper and the deucer and the slider and everything else at stages. He's got the outcome he wants. It's the best result for the Bulldogs.
He suggested last night that it was unfair that he had to answer the...
Well, if it's unfair, then don't cop $1 million a year off Channel 9. So if you don't want the money off Channel 9, that's fine. But otherwise, you are going to have to sit on that panel and you are going to have to, at times, answer questions from reporters.
What do we make of his explanation last night and that going toe-to-toe with Chemis? It was pretty confrontational and Chemis, he held his gloves up. What did you guys think of it?
Chemis did his job. He for once, Gus was he was put to the sword. He was questioned. I thought he looked nervous. I thought he looked anxious about his responses. He can say until he's blue in the face that this has all happened in recent days since Galvin was given permission to talk to other clubs. But I think the NRL, as the governing body of our game, owe it to the other clubs. You talk about the other clubs. I think we have rules in place, and I'm not accusing Gus of doing the wrong thing here, but I think the NRL owe it to the clubs to do a proper investigation into this and try and find out exactly when the phone calls did start it. Look, they might be telling the complete truth, but because there is so much innuendo out there, the game owes it to everyone to tell us what the truth was. Like we had that investigation a couple of years ago with Ben Hunt when there was accusations flying at the time. It just disappeared into the ether.
But does it all...
What's the use of having a rule?
I was about to say...
What's the use of having the rule? There's the rules of the game.
I think he's playing within the rules because you can talk about players. You just can't offer them...
No, you can't, Gordon. The rule changed. You used to be able to talk, but you couldn't sign the contract until November 1. Now you can't.
You're not allowed to negotiate.
There's no negotiations at all.
But aren't they negotiating now? Or...
Well, they are now because the club's given them permission to do it.
They're all negotiating all the time. We all know that.
So why have the rules? Why have the rules?
It's a fair question. Is head office scared of Gus? because you go back to last year and there was a stage where they hit him with a breach notice for comments that he'd made in the media and on television, and they were adamant that they were going to stick to their guns, and it was a $20,000 fine. Well, in the end,
they're not scared.
They
of
rolled
guns.
over.
They're not scared of him.
I don't reckon
They're actually trying to come up with some sort of way of stopping what's happened over the past few months from happening. But it's hard. It's hard
because it's quite simple.
But how simple is it?
This is how simple it is. Don't allow it. Like, who runs the game? Do the agents run the game? Do the clubs run the game?
Yes,
no, they don't. The NRL runs the game. The governing body runs the game. If you sign a contract, this is how easy it is. You sign a contract and you have 30 players in your squad, and usually they sign off on those guys by early rounds. Make them play out the season at least. You know there's always going to be shenanigans in the off-season and deals will be done. Let that be the trade window. But for the duration of the season, keep the players at the club.
And they come up with legal action.
Well, unless
unless
a club or an agent can come up with extenuating circumstances that and the bar is set really, really high. It happens all the time, Gordon.
So
it's the biggest blight on the game, and it has to be
The
fixed.
NRL are 100% behind a trade window, but the RLPA are not.
Who runs the game?
Clint Newton
But this is the saddest part, right?
But they're in partnership now, and the players have a huge say through the RLPA. So just to get something clear there, they are behind it, and they're pushing for it. And going back to how do you stop someone like Gus, or even me, you know, people talk about conflict of interest, and how do you stop the likes of all the people we've got on our panels who are involved in clubs, and Channel 9 who are all involved in clubs and got jobs there, and of having opinions on players and coaches, and where do you draw the line?
You can't stop that. But going back to the question that we just spoke about, if you stop players willy-nilly and clubs switching and changing and getting out of a deal here and getting out of it, it's very easy to stop. Don't allow it. Don't allow it until the off-season.
Well, your answer is that.
What do you do in this instance?
24 hours before the State of Origin game, and the biggest story in rugby league, and the story you have to
It's
lead
not the
on,
biggest story
and
in
you
my
have
head.
to talk about.
The biggest
Gordon,
story is State of Origin.
It's not at the moment. It's a 19-year-old kid that's played about 30 first-grade games. Because that's why we're talking about him right
but then
now.
to change that, then
They can change the narrative.
We've got to change clubs from moving kids on too. So if they make the poor
course we
choice,
do.
that they've got to stay with him as well.
And I think there may be circumstances where a club loses a stack of players through injury or something personal has happened that is unavoidable. But in these instances, mate, if you made clubs stick to their roster, then it becomes a battle of endurance, survival of the fittest, and it's a simple solution.
Yeah, but Crawls, on the flip side as well, clubs tap players on the shoulder
and
all
mate,
the
you
time.
stop it both ways. You stop it both ways.
I just don't know.
And you give the fans, mate, the fans out there, they can make it a better world, mate.
They can.
They can
There's
make it a better
no question
world.
there's a better system than the mess that it is at the moment, because we've had DCE, we've had Dylan Brown, now it's Lachlan Galvin. It's dominated front and back pages for months.
Tigers
on
fans
end.
would be disappointed. Para fans, there was a shot of a Para guy with Galvin on the back of a Parramatta jersey.
So how do they fix it then? But how do they fix it?
But tell me, how would the speculation stop if there was a transfer?
You'll never stop the speculation, and you'll never stop all the talk that goes on behind the scenes, as you just said. But at least during the competition, if you stop players transferring, this doesn't happen. Lachlan Galvin finishes the season at Westcott Tigers, and at the end of the season, they come up with a plan to get him out.
What if a player goes to a club and says that he's been bullied?
Well, yeah. Well, then it requires an investigation. But don't you think?
But they'll just come up with excuses.
That's what they'll do. Because they did this time. Because those social posts that's not bullying.
No, I don't believe it is either.
Yeah, but I
don't believe it is either. I think that
find
was a show of respect to his coach.
On that, I think you'll find that list of grievances that the agent went into Richo's office with. It's not just about the little Snapchat and the Instagram posts. There's a hell of a lot of detail in all of that. And it would be ugly and dirty laundry aired in public if it did make its way into the courts.
That's interesting. Right, now, tracking back to Gould and Chemis last night, work colleagues went toe-to-toe on air. We all saw it, whether it was on the show or socials all throughout the day.
I liked it.
Apparently, it went beyond air, off air.
Well, I was watching it live. It felt like they were sort of forced into a ad break because it looked as though it was starting to get a little bit overly heated. And then when it did cut to the ad break, talking to people who were there today, they certainly suggested that Gus wasn't overly happy. He felt as though, I think there might have been a couple of expletives used, and he felt as though his integrity had been questioned.
So it continued to when
Oh, they kept going toe to
kept
toe
going.
after they cut to an ad break. There was definitely further words exchanged.
Do you think we'll see Chemis on the panel anytime soon?
Well, he got resold last week at the behest of Isaac. I hope they stick by him because I thought he did his job.
Yeah, I thought he did too. I mean, it's all, it's very rare that Gus gets questioned about his actions and his comments. And I love the fact that, right or wrong, Chemis didn't back down. Like, he backed himself, continued to take him on. And Gus is an intimidating guy, but not only because he's, again, one of the brightest minds in our game, but he's one of the most experienced, he's one of the most powerful, he's one of the most intimidating. And Chemis just went for it and didn't take a backward step, and you've got to respect that. Not many guys have got the, what to do that, and I thought Mick did a good job.